Hello to everyone and welcome to another session of EU Campaign Insider, organized by the European Campaign Playbook, where we interview the best campaigners, social media activists in Europe, and we exchange best practices. And by the end of the session, we hopefully we have learned something new. My name is Sebastian. I am the founder of the European Campaign Playbook, and I will be your host today. With me, we are doing, by the way, we are doing this hybrid event like we do these days. And we have speakers joining us here in Brussels. Francesca Maria Risso, who is based in Brussels, of course, but she's an activist back in her country, in Poland. And we will have also Jakub joining us, there we go, joining us from Warsaw. And again, he's a campaign expert and also an activist. So both of the guests today, they have their pretty demanding full-time job, either in Brussels or in Warsaw. But then on top of that, they are very active on social media, and they are very vocal about women's rights, about LGBT rights, and of course the whole pro-European cause. I would like first to hear about their stories, where they come from, why they, what is their purpose that they have to do what they do. And I would like to start with Francesca. Francesca, please take it away.
Thanks, Sebastian. So thank you very much for the introduction. Just as a matter of perhaps an explanation, my name is Francesca Risso. However, I am Polish. I grew up in Poland as my father who was Italian, but I very much identify myself mostly with the Polish society and the Polish system. And having been schooled and having gone to university in Poland, I have close affinity with the country. And my story of activism starts a bit early when I was in high school, that I learned about certain movements that were created to advance the idea of European Union and European education in Poland and abroad. So I was involved for several years with campaigns promoting European education and promoting European mentality or European way of thinking about things and about Poland as well. Mm-hmm. But in 2017, I took it to a different level, where the first constitutional crisis occurred. And I was one of the many people on the streets of Warsaw protesting, using what we call civil disobedience and like peaceful protesting, sitting down and showing that European citizens that we are, we object to certain changes that were proposed by the the Polish government. And since then, wherever I went, I tried to bring it with me. I went to some universities where I also tried to organize protests or at least shows of support, whether it was for women's rights or LGBTQ. And now in Brussels with, it's a very much of a bottom-up organization that we have, but with friends and people that from the Brussels Polonia, we often try to do what we can to organize ourselves and send some strong messages, both to people that are here as decision makers in Brussels, but also to make sure that our cause and the cause of people in Poland doesn't go unnoticed. And I think this is the sort of multiplier effect that we try to have here. Organizing some events, going obviously protesting with bigger crowds in front of the Polish Perm Rep or the embassy. But yes, it's a very complicated task to do here in Brussels, I have to say.
I mean, that was amazing, and the fact again that you do that on top of your. I mean, it's really something to admire, really. I would like to now hear from Jakub, and I've known him and I know that these two guys, they know each other. So I'm very interested about hearing that part of the story as well. But Jakub, you had been following the work that we've done with the playbook for some time, and you've been our person in Warsaw who was telling us, how the situation was unfolding. And it's great to have you finally here joining us on camera. Please tell us your story and share it with the rest of the community.
Hi, thank you very much, and cheers to everyone joining in person or online. My name is Jakub Szymik. I'm actually based in Warsaw. I work full-time as a campaigns consultant, as a political consultant, advising NGOs and companies and activists on how to craft their messages. But I also have an NGO background back in Poland. I was involved in the debating community from my early days in high school and later on at the university, which made me a bit more interested and informed about how political issues could work. And obviously, throughout recent years, we had lots of protests in Poland, and I've tried to stay involved, mostly sharing my expertise, campaigning expertise with the group protesting. I helped develop social media communications for Women's Strike a few years back when they started in Poland, and I'm also helping pro bono with some workshops and trainings for the LGBTQ community in Poland, mostly within communication in the public sphere in Brussels, so that we also have the Brussels institutions MEPs involved and aligned with the situation in Poland and the cause here. So this is my background. This is a bit of professional and personal intertwining, but it was important for me always to have this European spirit going in Poland, which I believe a decade ago or 20 years ago was something that was pretty obvious for everyone when we were joining the European Union. But right now this spirit is a bit different, and it's important to keep the fire flowing.
Awesome. So I think like you embody the type of the type of audience that usually follow us on the European Campaign Playbook, because they go beyond. They may work in a different industry, but then they go beyond and they try to pursue and to fight for this for this cause, which is the pro-European Union, which is or the pro-European cause, but which is not in its best time. We have recently invited people working against Orban, so working with the Hungarian opposition, and telling us they were sharing with us the tactics that they were using at the moment in Hungary. They are gearing up to the election next year in April, and so they were telling us a little bit what was the situation in that country, and then boom, suddenly the situation in Poland explodes. I am pretty sure that the people following us know the basics about what triggered the events of last Sunday, but perhaps, and having you two here, perhaps you can give us some background. Not only why did it emerge, which we know this outrageous decision by the Constitutional Court of saying national law is over the EU law, but also what was happening in the background in the weeks running up to that decision. Francesca.
Well, I will start with perhaps relating a little bit to what's happening in Hungary. I think that, the current ruling party, Kaczynski said at some point, way back when, I think it was when they won the elections in 2015, that Warsaw will get closer to Budapest. And I think that this promise is ever more true these days. However, when it comes to explicitly what happened in the last week, like you said, Sebastian, I don't think we need to reiterate necessarily the ruling itself, but I wanted to discuss it from a bit of a different angle, since both me and Kuba actually studied law and we did constitutional law, and the debate whether there is primacy or supremacy of European law over Polish law is something that we definitely covered in the classroom. And even already then, and that I'm talking 2012 or 2013, I think, so that way before Law and Justice took over, the debate was already there. It wasn't Polish constitutional tradition is quite sovereign. It's focused a lot on sovereignty. It's due to history of our country that has been torn by wars and by people trying to steal the land and the governance of the land, and therefore this is very this idea of sovereignty is very close to our hearts. But it also means that sometimes, even though the EU isn't necessarily trying to steal sovereignty from Poland, it's really easy to awaken this angle, I feel, in the Polish rhetoric. So this discussion was already there, like I said. And I think that it was already, and that's one of the issues that I have with this discussion being taken on the streets, because I feel like people not necessarily, this is a very elitist way of approaching stuff. We understand law, so we are already better off, but most of the people that those decisions concerned are not necessarily there, and they're not interested in getting acquainted with it, and that's absolutely their right. However, we have to understand that this is a fruit of many years of this discourse being present. And in my opinion, it should have definitely stayed in the classroom rather than being, put as a matter of decision, a very politicized decision by what is a kangaroo court. Let's not call it differently, right? So yes, I think that the important thing for us to understand is that this is nothing new. This has existed as a discourse in the Polish legal sphere for many years, and as well with Polish citizens.
Okay, Jakub, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I think that you definitely have to mention the fact that those aren't the first protests that are happening in Poland in recent months and in recent years. But I feel that the nature of what's happening now is a bit different. So the protests, especially the ones regarding the abortion a few months ago or maybe a year ago, they were very bottom-up, very anti-establishment protests that really reached to very small towns, to very small communities. They were very they were kept free of the political engagement and political party engagement, and they felt like a very credible, like a very bottom-up events that weren't that much politicized. I feel that with the EU protests that are happening and have been happening last week, it's a bit different, because this EU presence, I think, is very closely connected to EPP and like Polish EPP situation with Civic Platform, using this spirit of very pro-European approach in Poland as a political issue. And I would say that it is very well, it is perceived that they are mobilized by the politicians. So most of the media mentions about the protests or the rallies show that those were initiated by Donald Tusk. We can clearly see that Civic Platform is benefiting politically from those. And I'm not exactly sure if this is a good direction for those, because we there should be a clear separation from what is a political issue and what is an activist citizen issue. And I'm not exactly sure if right now the EU affairs are not being used for the political benefit of both of the parties, actually, which I think might be a bit difficult. And also, given the history of the politicization of EU affairs in Poland, the very radical blame game that Law and Justice has been playing and blaming EU for many things that are happening in Poland and positioning EU as this external body to our system. And on the other hand, EPP using the European values, the absolute European values, as something that is supposed to give them a bit more support. I'm not sure if this is a good platform for political mobilization right now, and given that the issue is very complicated from the legal standpoint, it might be difficult to campaign on that issue for Polish activists.
Okay, I love that we cut to the chase, and we are now talking about campaign strategies. What to do, what would be the smart thing to do here, because there's a lot of at the stake. At this moment, I will quickly say hi to the people who are joining us from on social media. So we have Alycia, she's following. Actually, we have two people following us from Antwerp. So you have Alycia, who is a public affairs professional working in the health industry. And we have the one and only Brett Kobe, who is making sure that we have applied some of his tips on how to run hybrid events. So with that, I would like to say, please do join us on camera if you wish. I post the link in the comment section, and I already can see a few people who are here about to join us. we will of course open the floor approximately in the last 30 minutes of the chat. So I think I really want to build on this because my background is that I lived in the UK for the probably 5-6 years before the Brexit referendum happened, and there was this constant attack not only on the EU but also it was migrants. I'm pretty sure that will sound familiar. Exactly. Unfortunately, and at that point, no one was really defending, of course, not falling into the trap of going after the battles that the Brexiteers back then were throwing, such as the shape of the bananas, or the Brussels was regulating the shape of bananas, or not, but actually making the case for, this is more than the shape of the bananas. This is about values. This is about, protecting minorities. This is about living in peace, etc., and all this stuff. No, so making the big argument. And now we see, you mentioned that now in Poland we have a very tricky issue which touches sovereignty, and that is actually one of the, European nations are very proud nations, and you don't mess with that concept. And now you have a court, national court, making that decision, and you have someone in Luxembourg saying, exactly the opposite. It's fairly easy to see, which band you're gonna really, which group people will follow. So I agree that might not be the best platform to explain what the EU is about, because it's an imposition of, in this case, very technical EU law. But if that's not the cause that we should be pro-European should be campaigning on, what is the cause? What can we learn from all these movements that have been taking place in Poland? No, the women's strike, pro-LGTB, have they been successful? If not, what are the things that we can learn from them? Probably, Francesca, you can share your view on this.
Yes, I think that I will try and build on what Kuba already said, which is that there was quite a big success of the movement that was pro-women's rights. It actually was really impressive what happened in Poland, because we're talking days and days and weekends of people gathering in masses in Warsaw and beyond, and people marching for a common cause that weren't necessarily naturally from the same environment, right? So we really could see people from a cross-cut of the society and of jobs that they were performing, education, age, everything, gathering together because they could really understand the cause that they were fighting for was very understandable to them, and they could internalize it because it was about, I'm not 100% fan of this narrative, but it was about our daughters, mothers, sisters, and so on. But that made it ever so more tangible for people that were on the streets. And that made it much easier to organize yourselves and ourselves back then. But the problem is that exactly this narrative of something that is tangible and easy for us to understand. When I was on the streets way back in 2017, before I started working in Brussels in a corporate job, I used to have this let's say bottom-up initiative with some of my peers who were protesting, would approach people and ask them if they understood the constitutional tribunal changes, and really just give them super, super easy examples of how that can affect them personally. Because you don't think about it, just constitutional tribunal, you don't think really it exists unless, I don't think people knew that, many people knew that constitutional tribunal existed necessarily before 2017, So those changes really started being visible then, and people just don't understand it because they don't know the role of the constitutional tribunal, their impact on their lives.
Exactly.
And I'm not trying to be patronizing here. I think it's just very difficult, and unless you study it, and it's just not that easy. So you go to them and you try and bring the difficulty and the problem that is being this game that is being waged because it's a political game, and try to explain why that can impact them. So we use really simple cases. We were explaining to them what would happen, for example, your neighbor that is somehow affiliated to the ruling party extends their, let's say, their land onto yours, or uses something that is yours, and then if the if the case goes up and up, and then you end up being on a losing position just because you are not affiliated to the government. So we try to, simplify these cases, and I think that kind of worked. That was really small initiative, but a lot of it is about crafting these messages in a way that they can be taken and internalized by people. And when you're talking about constitutional supremacy of whatever Polish law over European law, this message doesn't fly. I can understand it, but I'm here in Brussels, and I'm not necessarily sure my family necessarily grasps the importance of that.
And anyone who knows a thing or two about framing understands that the moment you join that discussion, you have already lost.
Yeah.
Because that's a discussion that you cannot win.
Exactly.
With the average person, I agree with you. It's not being patronizing at all. I think it's being realistic that people, when they wake up every morning, they have many concerns, which are political concerns. Public transport, the quality of education of your kids, having good jobs, etc. And then it's unless you put them in a setting where you say, okay, now we're gonna talk about legal issues, which are definitely important. They won't be able, no one, even not me, not you, won't be able to switch on and talk about that. So that makes a lot of sense. I have a few comments, but I also want to hear from Jakub. And also, Jakub, if you can tell us, you who are in Warsaw, tell us what is the narrative that in this case the main players, and I of course we are from Brussels, and we think about Tusk or Tusk. That Tusk. Is Tusk. I know there's been a debate around that
how to pronounce his name.
So what is the narrative that Tusk and his party Civic Platform is using or used back the other day on Sunday?
I fully agree with your comments, Francesca and Sebastian. And just to build on this, I think that what Civic Platform is trying to do is to kind of resurrect the spirit of Poland entering the EU in 2004. So I feel that the people who are coming to the rallies, those are people who remember the atmosphere and the things that were at stake when we were entering EU in 2004. I was a child back then, but I still remember that this was something that was being pushed in schools, in the official offices, in church, everywhere around you. You could really feel the excitement about the EU, because this was the opportunity for this very palpable change for you in everyday way of life. And I feel that there are lots of people who remember that time and remember this very organized communications effort to make people believe that they are somehow European citizens and that they will be some like European citizens in a way. And I think that people who internalize this are those who are really interested in how the situation, even from the legal perspective, spans out. And I think that those are the people who were showing up to the protests and to the rallies and who believe that EPP is the party that they believe will guard those European identity for them personally. But in the meantime, throughout the years, I feel that after Poland already entered the European Union, it wasn't as easy to show this EU as this very pure, very aspirational platform. It got a bit more real, and there were lots of things that EU maybe was failing on, or maybe was not communicating clearly. And I think that right now the injustice is, and people who are not that pro-European I can understand their point of view that this is not a part of identity now. And with the conservative, more nationalist narrative being present in Poland, it's easy to forget that EU is also part of our national legal system, that we as Polish are also Europeans. That EU is not this it's not based in values, which I think we as Polish people believed a few years ago, but it's based on the free flow of money, of having common legal framework for some technical stuff, for free movement of goods, etc., but not exactly the values. And I think this is the main difference between people who are protesting today, who believe that EU should also be like common values, and that EU is also some kind of like should give guidance to national states about the values. And on the other hand, people who believe that yes, okay, we think that EU is important, but they should keep the values to themselves. And I think this is the main difference, and also the main difficulty for Civic Platform right now, and also for the activists not to focus only on the political parties, but mostly for the activists to to take down this wall of arguments that EU should be just a simple regulatory body and not a values regulator. And I think that this is the main difficulty for the activists right now, because a lot changed between the moment we entered European Union and today, and this should somehow be taken into consideration, and maybe trying to revive those memories will not be enough in today's discourse.
I have a question regarding what you have just said. Everyone knows that the majority of Polish, they are pro-Europeans, in the sense that they think that that it has been positive economically speaking for the country, and it has given opportunities probably for the young and the not so young. And I have that discussion with people here in Brussels a lot, and with clients, and they say, no, we need to focus. That's what they say. We need to focus on showing what the EU does for you, and showing that this library was built with EU money, and then we have the EU flag put on front of it. I call it this strategy is like what the Romans did. And they to assimilate or to integrate a new territory, what they would come is, okay, we're going to build the public bath, and we will do a lot of things for you which are tangible that you can see every day. And then you have this from the Monty Python, when they said, what have the Romans done for us? They start, well, now the streets are quite safe to walk at night. Okay, but other than security, other than what have they done for us? And I say, nothing. Okay, so then they go, boom, and then they go and then they go and protest, and then they go to all this complot to kill the emperor. Or so I think it's not enough, because in the end you would say, oh yeah, Europe has done so much for us, and I saw it in the UK. And I say, yeah, but it's look at the money that has been sent to, for example, the farmers in Cornwall, and the huge subsidies that they receive from the EU, and look at what Thatcher negotiated to take back some money out of the EU, and at the end of it, you find that even the people who are receiving the most, like the farmers in Cornwall, they actually voted to leave. And then the next day, of course, they found out that the UK government was not going to give them that money. So I think all that I'm trying to say is that saying that we're pro-Europeans because we feel that we get more from the EU that we put, it's short-lived. And to me, then really the next step should be, culture. It's very complex because we don't have a common language. We don't have we can work through education and things like Erasmus, and recently you could see those who watch who are fans of golf. You could say that they were the European team. They were Team Europe, and they were playing on the US Open with the European flag. I think these things can be very important. But to me, values is the next step. If something links someone, my father, who is a self-employed in the south of Spain, and someone working in Gdansk, is that at least we have some common values of, we like to have freedom of the press. We We like to have democracy. We of course understand what rule of law is, which is what you explain. Is this ability also to defend yourself against the arbitrary treatment from your government, because we are with certain with distrust. So with democracy comes a little bit of distrust of government, because you want those check and balances being in place, etc. So to me, I'm trying to focus on values and say to people, forget about or include in your toolbox more about values, and forget about the goodies that the EU brings. But I don't know if I am very successful at doing that, because still they are quite adamant, and they think this is the key. What is your take in Poland? Do you think the majority of the population in Poland can, with an education process and with a lot of communication and of course with the civil society leading, not only the political parties, do you think they can come to this place where they say, yeah, of course we understand what democracy, rule of law, is, and then we attach that to being part of the EU?
Well, first of all, I think that there is a very important concept that I don't want to spend too much time on, but I think I'm 100% sure that Law and Justice thinks that what they're doing is rule of law. And I think this is a mentality that is a little bit different in countries that have experienced different historical shifts and historical changes. So in that sense, I feel like we have to really avoid this European patronizing tone that sometimes happens in Brussels, that comes from bigger countries that are like, we are the ones who know what rule of law is. And in Poland, people are like, yeah, but we voted for people who are making these changes. So this is rule of law. Yeah. So I think that this kind of brings me to a point where these ideas, when they're coming top down, they're not necessarily as successful as when they're bubbling up, right? What you mentioned correctly, Brexit, and that's something that I also wanted to mention. You mentioned the regulation of shapes of bananas, and I also remember regulation of pillows. I think there was this ad that was circulating, and that was brilliant communication on the other side, obviously. But this was communication that was really touching on people's everyday lives. They wanted to understand why on earth would Commission regulate their pillows or their bananas, and that created this agitation, this lack of understanding, and perhaps even fear of interference of these institutions that are perceived to be far away into their daily lives. And I think that it was a good play. It was a good campaign, to say. That's what I think about Brexit in many ways, disappointingly so. What I think, however, to play on the issue of values, I noticed it more in Brussels, that politicians stand up, when it was the case for the LGBTQ or women's rights, they stand up and say, these are European rights and European values that we're talking about. And it is true. But I don't see that many people bottom up, and I'm not talking leaders or activists, but that many people having the same realization, making the same connection in Poland. Mm-hmm. So it's all nice that, MEPs stand up and raise a European flag and LGBTQ flag and say these are European values, they're one and the same. But as long as this perception and this approach isn't reflected with the people that are on the streets when they're protesting against changes on law on abortion, for example, or LGBTQ rights, this is the sentiment that we somehow should think about how we can convey and internalize, Mm-hmm. And this way, perhaps this is a better way than just using EU, at least in my perception. I don't know if you will agree, Kuba, but this is better. This is intertwining and merging EU and its values with the concerns of everyone in Poland, or at least bigger groups of people than just the ones that are driven by the EU, non-EU discussion. And then kind of, I always say education, 100%. That's what I've been doing with for a big chunk of my life. But education, saying that certain things are European, certain values are European, and making sure that this sentiment goes up and we don't impose it on others.
Yeah. Totally. Jakub, your take?
I'd say that like a very solid majority of people declare that they are pro-European and that they want to have Poland in the European Union. So I don't think that this is up for discussion that much. But when it comes to what it means exactly, to like detailed decisions or detailed detailed approaches by the European Commission or by the European Parliament, I'm not exactly sure that many people follows this. So this is why I think that it might be easier to like for the pro-European camp to focus a bit more on the general benefits that we have from being in the EU that are very high level, and not mixing this up with a very polarizing discussion on values most of the times. And this would be my advice. But obviously this is very difficult, because we understand that some of the things, such as rule of law in Poland, or maybe LGBTQ rights in Poland, or maybe women's rights in Poland, need this support from European institutions, need the support from European Parliament, from European Commission. And I think that for the European Commission and other bodies to be seen as reliable supporters of those values, they need to act and they need to do their thing, whether this is popular within national communities or not. And I'd say that the bottom line is to communicate as clearly as possible about this, and obviously has many as many as possible people on board on with those changes. But I believe that EU is talking about the LGBTQ rights, the women's rights, the rule of law being the European values. They need to step up and they need to act on this, and not only talk about this. And I believe that this is the role of the European institutions to push forward on this.
But they did.
Okay, I think we've had super interesting discussion for the first part of the session. I think we touch upon narratives, key players, a little bit of background on what's going on in Poland. You can now see that we have invited one of our followers and members to the session. You can introduce yourself, Alycia, and then please ask your question to both speakers or to one of them.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, guys, because it's been a super interesting discussion. But very briefly, I am a healthcare public affairs professional, but of course, as Sebastian was mentioning, many of us who work in the Brussels bubble, as you guys, we do stuff beyond our day-to-day work in terms of advocacy and involvement. So it's of course super interesting for me to see and learn more about what is going on, because my knowledge is very limited to what we see on the media and specific publications. So it's great to learn more about that. I have a quick question. Well, quick question might be a bit ambitious, but of course, what you were speaking about, that the intrinsic and integral issues affecting Poland are massive. But I think there's also a very, very big issue about the potential rippling effects if this is not solved, or if there's no clear solution to what is going on from the European level, because it's not only about Poland or Hungary, but it could go to many other topics beyond that, and beyond those countries. We can speak about pro-independence movements in Spain as well, massively challenging what is going on as per European rules and regulations. So I appreciate the long-term solution to those problems is intricate and complex, and it is a long-term solution what is needed. But in terms of kind of immediate response from a European level, and resonating with the message that you sent, Francesca, about being very careful about the top-down messaging, and the counterproductive effects that can have, what do you think the EU has to do immediately to kind of signal this is the line of working? And I appreciate, it's quite a complex thing, but I would love to know more about your opinions.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, Alycia, thank you for this question. I agree with you. I think it's very, very tricky. Back in 2017, I think that one of my biggest concerns when we were protesting was, when will EU do something? We're all maniacally tweeting at Timmermans to trigger relevant procedures that will stop whatever was going on. EU took painfully long to do anything. It was half a year before the procedure was triggered, and it was so disengaging in a way. You know, I'm super pro-EU, and I have always been, but I remember the sentiment of being on the street and, you know, like trying every channel that we could to our MEPs, to the people that were in the commission, and trying to solicit some sort of answer, but also just to, in a way, be noticed by the EU. And make sure that they see that we are there as protesting people on the streets, and that we are really sacrificing quite a lot, because we were arrested, we were taken, I'm not going to go into my personal story, I can do it afterwards, but we did have problems relating to the fact that we were there protesting in favor of maintaining constitutional values. And EU just took half a year.
Now and then they go on Twitter and they say, you know, we're deeply concerned about this, and that is, you know, the deeply concerned, you know, strapline. Yeah, I imagine it would be extremely frustrating, especially for a pro-European, to think, you know, I really support and believe in this, and still, you know, they're deeply concerned. So what?
Yes, the expression of deep concern is like painful. It's almost painful for me, because it always makes me laugh so hard. And deep concern will definitely solve geopolitical and political issues in Europe. But I think that now we are at a different stage. We also have to tread carefully, because now, you know, Poland is experiencing some level of sanctions for what they're doing. So whether it is, you know, the LGBTQ-free regions, or whether it is Rutte announcing today that they will withhold certain amount of money for Poland for recovery. These are concrete steps, and I think that but they still have to be very. We have to tread lightly, because the problem is that the money that the EU is withholding doesn't go necessarily to the government, although partially, obviously, it does. It goes to the people that see the actual results of EU's interference in their daily lives, in the form of, you know, better roads, better preschools, better whatever funds that they get, whether it is Erasmus, whether it is schools. So I'm afraid that if this continues, we can see this sort of dynamic in terms of communication of the ruling party saying, see, they're taking away our money. And now it's even worse. So I think that there is a way for Law and Justice to turn this activity by the EU in their, as an arm in their, as a tool in their toolbox, or an arm against pro-EU protesters or pro-EU people. And that's what I'm afraid of. But on the other hand, I at least see something, and I see MEPs, and I see, you know, commissioners and whatnot standing up and saying stuff. That wasn't the case in 2017. So it is painfully slow, and deep concern cannot, you know, fix the situation.
Cannot cut it, not indeed. Jakub, would you like to? I see you nodding, so probably you want to react.
Yes, I think I agree with what Francesca is saying. I would say that you know, being an LGBTQ people in Poland, I am happy to see, and my levels of trust towards European Commissions are rising, because, you know, like at the beginning of the situation, like 1/3 of the country was covered by regulations that were imposing those, let's call them LGBT-free zones, and then in the end we had lots of local governments you know, withdrawing from those declarations, and we had, you know, government, like Polish government officials, advising local governments to do so. So I think that this is all due to the very successful lobbying of the LGBTQ and human rights organizations in Brussels. But I think like Polish activists also need to understand that this will not happen by itself, and that also like you need to focus on delivering the message and explaining what's happening and what are the consequences, also to people who are European bureaucrats and commissioners and MEPs, and you need to make active contact with them about this so that they act. Obviously, I agree that there is high risk of this narrative that EU is taking the money away, but I would bet, maybe not very surely, but I would bet that, you know, like people, like more people in Poland are in support of the EU that are in support of current government, and in the end, this might be a good argument to show that maybe the current government is overstepping somehow. That's it.
Thanks, both. Yeah, it makes complete sense. It's just, you know, excruciatingly painful to see the pace of how things move. And even if you are a massive an EU supporter, and I met CEST in London as well. So I've also witnessed what the frustrations as a pro-European of the misunderstandings, but still, I think we have to be very critical with what our institutions do to be able to make a change eventually, because if we as pro-Europeans are not critical of it, then who is going to make sure that there's a change made? So yeah, it's a pity, and yeah, I appreciate it's just, as Polish people, it's extremely frustrating for you, but hopefully thanks to your efforts and those efforts of your colleagues, it will be possible bit by bit.
And to follow on that positive note, because when you especially in topics around Brussels and the EU, it's very easy to fall into this negative attitude. Nothing is happening. It's too slow, but you rightly said, there's been some progress since 2017. And I clearly see, and I can tell you by experience, that the change needs to happen, like you said, also from the bottom up. I don't think that now the EU come in with the message of which I found counterproductive. Like, if Poland doesn't want to comply with this, then they can leave the EU, or we're not going to give them the money. So all that is playing into the hands of the populists. Clearly, I mean, and it's so easy to see why. But here's my point. Okay, and since we have 15 minutes left, one of the things that I want to do, and our community is about, is writing a playbook. A playbook is a set of insights, tools, tactics that we campaigners we can share and we can put into practice right away. And that's also the key thing about our events, that we share, not only discuss, but also share actionable insights. And I would like to hear yours and on what is the way forward for pro-Europeans in Poland. Here's I start, so that I give you some time to think. But I start, and I will draw these lessons from the experience that I had in the UK. I think what I see in Poland is very positive. It wasn't there in the UK during the years 2000, at least during the years that I lived there, from 2011 to 2016. So I lived there for 5 years, and every single day you could see on the front page of tabloids, immigrants are the ones to blame. The EU is doing this. The EU is doing that, and no one was on the pro-EU camp trying to counteract that narrative. Don't get me started with the role that the political parties played, especially back then the Labour's leader, Jeremy Corbyn, which I think it wasn't there. I mean, the Conservative Party was completely split on the issue. Labour Party, they were more concerned with with fights from previous centuries, in my opinion. The Liberal Democrats were the only ones being like super pro-Europeans, but of course, they in 2015 they were hardly hit during the election, so they became near to irrelevant, and the civil society wasn't even there. After the referendum, though, then there was like this huge pro-European movement, but I say it's too late. It's a little bit too late. It's not the case in Poland. In the case of Poland, you have a strong civil movement, social, organizations that play a different dynamic from the political parties. And what you need to do, that didn't happen after the referendum in the UK, is unity. I mean, you come from different, and we may discuss about a lot of different things, but in the end, you have to come to a united front from a civil society point of view. The political one, don't get your hopes too high, because they are in a completely different dynamic. They want to keep their seats, and they want to, it's the politics of it is completely different. But civil society, you have to to form a united front that, of course, takes into account everyone's perspective, but that doesn't get into, infighting because of tiny details.
Yeah.
Why is that? Because the other camp, they're really united. You can see the other day, last weekend, you could see several anti-EU or Eurosceptic leaders appearing in one of the events that the far right party Vox in Spain organized. I can tell you, if you see those parties in parliament, they couldn't agree on a single thing because they are way different. The guys from Italy, Poland, there were people from Sweden and the Netherlands with the Spanish. I mean, you couldn't agree on a single thing. But yet they were there. They were there sharing a common narrative and sharing a common message. And I think that for the civil, if you are part of the civil society, I would really encourage that you always seek, unity and try to postpone more theoretical or policy-related events for the future. At the moment, what you need to do, you really need to create that cross-party movement that stands ready to be mobilized, and and a movement that in the end can put enough pressure in politicians because the politicians will only respond to the bottom line. And the bottom line is you can influence the bottom line. And so seek unity, please. Don't start. I've seen it in the UK, pro-European organizations, as we speak, are fighting about tiny details, in my view, and they would be, in a better position if they, found the things that they are in common and they go with them and they campaign for them. That's my take. But of course, I see Francesca already, she's going at me.
Ready to jump.
Something I said triggered her, so I want to hear what she has to say.
No, I mean, listen, Sebastian, I agree with you in the principle of everything, but I'm going to be the first. I'm going to take the honor, Kuba, to remind everyone the story of Committee of Protection of Democracy, okay. So-called COD, which exactly was aiming to do those things that you said, and then it got immediately hijacked by political agenda and by platforms, Civic Platform, and alike movements. So I think that, yes, in principle, this is a very good sentiment to have. What happened to COD is a different, longer story, so I think we don't have that time. But I think that while it is a good sentiment to have, we really have to be, especially sitting in bubbles like we are here, and even though Kuba isn't with the bubble with us, in a certain way, he also is a part of a bubble that doesn't necessarily relate that much to it's a uniform experience of Polish people with the EU or with the values. We have a lot of privilege that we need to be very much aware of, and we have to be very self-critical. Yeah. And the EU has to be very self-critical when it looks at situations like what's happening in Poland. And there has to be a lot of understanding and fundamental understanding of the dynamics that are happening in Poland, because one of the things that I see, and that's what I alluded to as well with rule of law, is that unless you really understand the context from which Poland is evolving, and that is a very turbulent historical context where our religious and our, let's say, political past is so intertwined, and that creates this sort of level of almost philosophical complexity that without really understanding it and emphasizing with it, you cannot be as influential as you want to be. And I see it very often because I also, in my past, I have written, one of my theses was actually about rule of law. And I've seen very often sitting in front of EU officials and MEPs, them almost trying to explain rule of law at me, as if it was something that they only know the right answer to, And that made me a little bit like almost understanding towards why people don't necessarily want to subscribe to these ideas, because when there is no compassion and understanding and empathy, we really will hit a wall, because we will just be saying our right is more important than the right of the others. You are wrong, and we are the ones who are in the right. So this self-criticism, and this goes both for us in the EU bubble, MEPs in the parliament, the Commission, but also the leaders of the parties that are currently using this entire issue as their political platform, as, for example, Donald Tusk is. These are the people who really need to be self-critical, because if this is an issue that has a lot of potential, a lot of strength, a lot of power, but it can really easily turn around and backfire against the same people that are now using it. And I think that the self-critical message here is the most important for me.
Okay, so there you go. We have, in principle, unity. Would be good to have, but also self-criticism, trying to understand, to have empathy, show empathy, understand the history of Poland, very, very rich history and complex history of Poland, but like in history of many EU countries. I think this is one of our main strengths, but also a weakness, because but yeah, I don't want to wait more to hear what Jakub has to say on this. So what's your line, your tips for those who are campaigning or who will be campaigning, playing a role, no matter how small or how big, in Poland within the next few weeks and months?
Thank you for this. I really agree with both the unity call and the self-criticism call, or at least self-awareness of the politicians and what they are playing with. My final tip would be a bit smaller, maybe tactical. I don't think that putting Polexit on the table and putting it into the realm of like public imagination is exactly a good thing to do. I believe that the campaigners should be focused on reminding the positive things that we have from membership in the EU, but putting up exiting the EU for the discussion, like from my perspective, is asking for trouble and further polarization of the opinions between the two camps, and maybe not on purpose, but creating a stronger anti-EU camp in Poland. Which I don't think it's necessary, because of all of the things that Francesca told us about, like due to politicization of the issue, due to the campaigning dynamics that, don't often reflect the calmer times and calmer realities. So I would try to find a common ground between the national and the European level, and putting Polexit to the discussion. If you're doing this, think about the risks that are connected to this, even though you have a very pro-European society, even though you believe that this will give you political halo somehow. Please think about this before you do this.
Okay, so I think with that, it is a really good time to put an end to this very interesting chat, because we want to use this as a very practical and to the point sessions. I hope this one has been. It has definitely been for me. One last thing that I can probably say is that I remain optimistic. I think I am the only optimistic in town in Brussels, and but hey, I think optimistic we will shape the world, and I think there are reasons. I can tell from my own experience. We will follow this issue closely. We will try to do more sessions like this to connect people. We will write more. We'll try to write the playbook, of course, in collaboration with the campaigners who are in the field in Poland, and anything that they need from us, networking, tactics, whatever. We stand with you, and I am pretty sure we will be in a much better place in a few years, when I think political change will come to Poland. And that is the most important thing, that political change comes to Poland, so that so many other issues can be really solved. Thank you very much, and see you next Thursday. Like every Thursday, we do these networking and learn sessions for 1 hour. If you're in Brussels, please do join us, because it's after that we a few of us go for lunch together, and I think it's great to mark it on your calendars, which is your moment for networking during the week after a very long lockdown. So again, thank you very much, and see you soon, Jakub, hopefully in Warsaw, Brussels. And thank you, Francesca, for joining us.
Thank you very much, Sebastian.
Thank you very much for having me. Bye.
Cheers.